Hi guys, so here we are after reading
Chapter 26
of the book of Matthew, and now it's time to review.
And 2 chapters left. And of course, Matthew 26, there was a lot.
Yeah, 75 verses.
Probably, I think, the longest chapter we've read so far.
Yeah.
So I'll begin. So for me was the story of Mary anointing Jesus at Bethany.
Mm-hmm.
And the story is found between verses 6 all the way down to verse 13. And in verse 13 is what stood out to me. And it says, "Surely I say to you, wherever this gospel is preached in the whole world, what this woman had done will be told as a memorial to her." You know, when you're talking about the story of Jesus, you never think about this story. So why is this story so important, or why is it attached to the gospel story?
I think because of her sacrifice.
Of what she did, right? We know that she was aware, and it seems as if she was the only one aware of what was going to happen that week, because this is pretty much the last week of Jesus. So she was aware that Jesus was about to die, and it says that she basically spent a year's wage, other places might say it, a year's wage of this alabaster that she pours on Jesus. And when you think of a year's wage, just think about like $50,000, just your average year's wage.
Wow. Yeah, you could even see it in verse 8, the reaction of the disciples. Why this waste? Like, I can only imagine, like, what? Like, what is she doing?
Yeah, so much money. And they even said, that could have been given to the poor.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Jesus kind of rebukes what they say. And he basically says it in verse 11, "For you have the poor with you always, but me you do not always. For in pouring this fragrant oil on my body, she did it for my burial." So she understood what was about to happen. So if kind of to bring it back home to us, like, what sacrifices are we making for Jesus? Because for her, right, a year's wage was...
I mean, I don't think anyone nowadays would be able to sacrifice a year's wage.
It seems like a lot, but she understood the magnitude of what was about to happen, and no one was willing to do it for him, but yet Jesus appreciated what happened and what she did. And I think we shouldn't forget the story of Mary, as well as we're reading through the story of Jesus. Like, Jesus tells us that her story is that important, because she put her priorities in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, what spoke to you?
Well, I mean, a lot of things. I had so many things highlighted in this chapter, but we can't talk about everything. So the next, I think, important part of this chapter was verse 38 through, it kind of goes on through a few verses, but it starts in verse 38, and it's when Jesus is with his disciples, and he goes to pray, and he tells them, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me." So I just think, I don't know, it broke my heart, just hearing Jesus, someone that
was with them for so long,
and it's supposed to be so strong. You wouldn't think Jesus needs anyone, but I mean, the reality is he did, and he needed
his closest friends.
And I feel like oftentimes when we're in times of sorrow, we think we can handle it ourselves. Like, we think, no, I don't need to ask for help, but you really do. Like, whether it's a friend, whether it's,
a counselor, a pastor, a family member,
exactly.
Someone, you need someone there with. God created us as relational beings.
Yeah, so don't be afraid to send a text, make a phone call, especially in these times that we're going through right now.
And, Jesus was basically in his last hours before his crucifixion when he's doing this prayer, so he needed as much help and prayer and support during this time.
Yeah, and he goes back and forth. He prayed 3 different times.
just kind of jumping off what you said, verse 39 says, he went a little farther and fell on his face and prayed, saying, "O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." So as hard as what Jesus was going through, he was already, the pain of our taking the weight of our sins upon himself was already bearing upon him. He even says that he cries and sweats blood. So it was already there. The agony already had started, and he needed his friends there with him. And of course, his friends are sleeping during this important time of Jesus' life. And when Jesus gets to them, he says this, which is, I think, is important for us to also remember. Verse 41, "Watch and pray lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak."
The flesh is weak.
So, living in these last days, we know more than anything we need prayer. Mm-hmm. We need to watch and pray. Like, we can't forget that those are important things for us to do. Like, to get us through whatever we're going through now and whatever is about to happen, we need prayer in our lives. Mm-hmm. If Jesus needed prayer moments before his crucifixion, how much more do we need prayer? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And of course, he says that the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. That's not an excuse for us. Just because we're weak individuals doesn't mean, oh yeah, Jesus says we're weak, therefore I don't need to pray. No, like, the spirit wants you to pray. You just have to take control of your flesh, take control of that weakness, and let Jesus live in you.
Exactly. So hopefully we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Don't forget to leave your comments of what spoke to you, and God bless.